Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, sometimes you get to those moments in a story where everything changes, things get serious, the tension's really building, and you just know something big is about to happen.
Right.
That's where we are today.
Okay.
We're taking a deep dive into the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11.
All right.
And this chapter is a turning point, a real shift in events as we move towards the crucifixion.
Yeah, it's full of action, this chapter is. And a lot of symbolism, too. It really sets up everything that happens during Holy Week.
Yeah, and we're going to break it all down.
Go ahead.
Everything from this really strange incident with a fig tree to this dramatic display of authority in the temple.
Right.
But first, let's set the scene.
Okay.
So, Jesus arrives in Jerusalem,
Okay.
but not in the way that people might have expected.
Mm.
So picture this. Jesus sends his disciples out on this strange errand to find a donkey, and not just any donkey, a colt that has never been ridden before.
Interesting.
Why the specific instructions? Well, this detail, it's not just historical flavor, it's packed with symbolic meaning.
Yeah, it really is. The choice of a donkey, especially one that's never been ridden before, it's a powerful image.
What do you think it means?
Well, in the Old Testament, you see kings riding donkeys as a symbol of peace,
Okay.
while a war horse, that was a sign of military power.
So Jesus is kind of flipping the script.
Yeah.
He's not showing up as some conquering warrior,
No,
but as a humble king, you know, a prince of peace.
absolutely. And it's really interesting to see how the crowd reacts to this. They lay down their cloaks and branches in front of him,
Yeah.
creating this path for him. They shout, "Hosanna! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord."
Powerful words.
Yeah, and these cries, they echo these ancient prophecies about the coming Messiah, the one who would save Israel. And with those words, you know, Son of David, they're making a direct connection between Jesus and the line of King David.
Right.
This powerful symbol of leadership and kingship.
It's like they're trying to crown him king right there.
Yeah, it really is. But he's not the conquering king they expected.
Right.
And he arrives on this symbol of peace,
Mm-hmm.
not military power. It's a subtle challenge, but a powerful one.
Yeah.
He's asking them to think differently about leadership.
So we see this tension between expectation and reality, between peace and power, and that tension that's going to continue to play out throughout the chapter.
Right.
And speaking of unexpected events, let's talk about the fig tree.
Oh, yeah, the fig tree. This is a story that leaves a lot of people scratching their heads.
Yeah.
It's a strange one.
So here's what happens. Jesus is hungry. He sees a fig tree in the distance. It's full of leaves.
Okay.
But when he gets closer, he realizes it has no fruit.
Mm.
Now, it wasn't even the season for figs,
Right.
so why was he so upset?
Yeah.
He actually curses the tree,
Wow.
saying, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." It seems like a pretty harsh reaction.
It does on the surface.
Right.
But I think if we dig a little deeper, we'll find that this story isn't really about a literal fig tree at all.
It's about something bigger.
Exactly. The fig tree was often used in the Old Testament as a symbol of Israel.
Okay.
It represented the nation's fruitfulness and faithfulness to God.
So a barren fig tree
Yes.
that could symbolize Israel's spiritual emptiness,
Yeah.
their failure to live up to God's covenant, even though they had this outward appearance of being religious.
You got it. It's a
Yes.
powerful image, and it really sets the stage for the next event, which is even more dramatic, the cleansing of the temple.
That's right, the cleansing of the temple. This is where things really get intense.
Yeah.
Okay, so picture this. Jesus walks into the temple courts, the very center of Jewish religious life.
Right.
And it's completely overrun with merchants and money changers.
Okay.
And he is furious. He overturns tables, drives out the animals, and he declares, "My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers."
This is such a powerful moment.
Yeah.
Such a stark contrast to his peaceful entry into the city. Remember that people were expecting a Messiah who would overthrow Roman rule?
Right.
But here he is confronting the corruption within their own religious system.
So he's not just challenging the political powers.
No.
He's challenging the heart of religious hypocrisy.
Exactly.
But what was so wrong with having a marketplace in the temple?
Well, I mean, you're right. It did serve a purpose.
Nah.
People needed to buy animals for sacrifices, and they had to exchange their foreign currency for temple currency.
Right.
But the whole system had become incredibly corrupt.
Okay.
Imagine the chaos, the noise, the haggling, the exploitation of those who had traveled from far away to offer sacrifices.
So it wasn't just the buying and selling itself. It was this atmosphere of greed and self-interest that had taken over the sacred space.
Exactly. And you can see just how powerful Jesus' actions were by the way the religious authorities reacted.
How did they react?
They were afraid. They saw Jesus as a threat, someone who could disrupt their power and their authority.
Yeah.
And that fear, it planted the seeds for their plot to kill him.
So this one act, the cleansing of the temple, it sets the stage for the ultimate confrontation that's to come.
He does.
But before we get there, Mark takes us back to the fig tree.
Interesting.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
So the next morning, as they're passing by the fig tree again, the disciples notice something shocking.
What's that?
The fig tree is completely withered,
Right.
dried up from the roots. They're astonished, and Peter even mentions the curse to Jesus. And this is when we get this really powerful message about faith. Yeah, it's like that withered tree is a visual reminder of what Jesus was talking about in the temple.
Yeah.
You know how outward appearances of religion can be deceiving?
That's a great point. And Jesus goes on to give this really powerful message about faith. He says, have faith in God. Truly, I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, go, throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, it will be done for them.
It's pretty powerful imagery, you know. Mountains represent those obstacles in our lives, the things that seem impossible to overcome.
Right. And he's saying that with true faith, even those impossible things become possible.
But he doesn't just say believe.
No.
He says does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen.
Right. It's not just about saying you believe, it's about really believing it in your heart.
Yeah, it's like a deep inner conviction where your thoughts and your words and your actions are all aligned.
Exactly. And then he connects this idea of powerful faith to something that you might not expect: forgiveness.
Really?
He says, whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your sins.
Huh. That's interesting. He's linking our ability to forgive others with our ability to experience that power of faith.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
It's like holding on to grudges creates this blockage, and it prevents that mountain-moving faith from flowing through us.
Yeah, it suggests that our inner state, our willingness to let go of resentment and anger, it plays a crucial role in our relationship with God.
Okay, so we've got the triumphal entry, fig tree, the cleansing of the temple, and this incredible teaching on faith and forgiveness.
It's a lot.
But there's one more important scene in this chapter, and it's a direct confrontation with the religious authorities.
Right. They weren't just going to let Jesus disrupt everything without challenging him.
So the religious leaders, they approach Jesus.
Okay.
And they demand an explanation for his actions. They say, by what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you this authority?
They want to know where he gets the right to challenge their power and disrupt their traditions.
And Jesus responds in a way that I think really catches them off guard.
How so?
Instead of giving them a direct answer, he asks them a question.
Oh, really?
He says, John's baptism, was it from heaven or of human origin?
This is a brilliant strategy.
What do you mean?
They're totally trapped.
Yeah.
If they say John's authority came from God, then they have to explain why they didn't listen to him.
Right.
But if they say John's authority was just human, well, then they risk angering the crowds who saw John as a prophet.
It's such a clever way to expose their hypocrisy.
Yes.
And their unwillingness to even acknowledge the truth.
They're more worried about holding on to their power and control than they are about finding the truth.
So how do they respond?
Well, they take the coward's way out.
What do they say?
They say, we don't know.
Wow.
And then Jesus has this really pointed response. He says, neither will I tell you by what authority I'm doing these things.
He refuses to play their game.
He does.
He's not going to waste his time trying to justify himself to people who are clearly not interested in the truth.
It's a powerful statement about true authority.
So what do you think he's saying about where true authority comes from?
Well, I think Jesus is showing us that his authority doesn't come from some human institution or from needing people to approve of him. It comes from something higher.
Okay.
And it's evident in his actions, his teachings, his unwavering commitment to love and justice.
So we've seen how Jesus challenges the religious establishment.
We have.
But how does this apply to us today in our own lives?
That's a great question. It challenges us to think about where we put our trust, our faith. Are we relying on external authorities, like institutions or traditions? Or are we cultivating an inner compass, a connection to a higher power that guides our decisions and our actions?
I see. So it's about Recognizing that true authority doesn't need to be defended or explained.
Yeah.
It just shows itself through acts of love and compassion and justice.
Right. Think about those areas in your life where you might be looking for approval from others or holding on to the need for external validation.
Yeah.
What would it look like for you to step into your own authority, to trust that inner guidance and act from a place of integrity and authenticity?
It's like he's asking us, are we willing to be the donkey?
The donkey.
You know, that symbol of humility and peace, even when everyone else expects a war horse.
That's a great way to put it. And remember the fig tree. It reminds us to look beyond outward appearances, both in ourselves and in others. Are we producing those genuine fruits of love, kindness, and compassion? Or are we just going through the motions, clinging to empty rituals and traditions?
Right. And we can't forget about the incredible power of forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely.
How might holding on to those grudges be blocking our own experience of faith, peace, and even joy?
Forgiveness isn't about saying that what someone did was okay. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger and resentment.
So it's about making space for healing and transformation.
Exactly.
Think about the challenges you're facing right now. Maybe you're feeling stuck, like you don't have any power. What if, like the people in Jerusalem, you're looking for freedom in all the wrong places?
That's a good point. What do you mean?
Well, this chapter suggests that true freedom doesn't come from changing your circumstances.
No.
It comes from changing your perspective.
It's about recognizing that true freedom comes from aligning yourself with God's will, from living a life of purpose and meaning, even when things are tough.
Wow, this deep dive into Mark chapter 11 has really brought up a lot for me. It's a powerful reminder that faith is an active process. It's not just a set of beliefs. And it takes courage, humility, and a willingness to let go of control. As we've been going through this chapter, I keep finding myself coming back to that teaching about faith. The mountain moving metaphor. It's inspiring, but it's kind of daunting too, don't you think?
It is. It really challenges us to think about what we believe is actually possible.
Right.
Are we limiting ourselves with doubt and fear?
Yeah.
Or are we open to the idea that with God, anything is possible?
So it's not enough to just say we have faith.
That's
Jesus is calling us to actually put our faith into action.
Right.
But what does that look like in our daily lives?
Yeah. How do we move from just believing to actually trusting?
Right.
Well, I think it starts with recognizing those areas in our lives where we feel stuck.
Okay.
Those mountains that seem impossible to move. What are the challenges, the fears, the doubts that are holding you back?
And then what?
Well, it's not about finding some magic formula or saying the right words.
Yes.
It's about aligning your thoughts, your words, and your actions with the belief that with God, anything is possible.
Okay.
It's about taking those first steps, even if they seem small.
Yeah.
And trusting that God will be with you every step of the way.
So it's about taking action, but it's also about letting go of control.
Exactly.
Trusting in a power greater than ourselves, even when we don't have all the answers.
That's a great way to put it. It's about letting go of that need to micromanage everything.
Right.
And trusting that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating things for our good.
So faith is not about forcing things to happen.
No, it's
Like
not.
it's about aligning ourselves with God's will.
Yeah.
And allowing him to work through us.
Right, and that's where forgiveness comes in again.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, if we're holding on to anger and resentment, it's like we're trying to move those mountains with one hand tied behind our backs.
It's limiting us.
Yeah, it is. Forgiveness frees up our energy, our hearts, our minds. It allows us to be more open to God's grace and power.
So we can approach those mountains with a clearer perspective.
Exactly.
With a lighter heart and a deeper trust in God's goodness. It seems like he's saying that the goal isn't to reach some perfect level of faith.
Right.
It's about embracing the process of growth.
The journey.
Yeah. Even when it's messy and imperfect.
Yeah, I think that's really comforting, actually.
How so?
Well, it's nice to know that we don't have to have it all figured out.
Right.
We're not expected to be perfect.
Yeah. But it's also a challenge, because it means we need to be constantly growing and evolving and deepening our relationship with God.
It's a lifelong journey.
It is. This deep dive into Mark chapter 11 has been so insightful.
Yeah, it has.
It reminds us that faith is not just a static belief, but it's a dynamic relationship with God.
Yeah.
And it's a relationship that challenges us to grow, to forgive, to trust, and to really live out our beliefs in a way that makes a difference in the world. And it's a reminder that even those small, ordinary moments in our lives can be filled with meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
When we approach them with an open heart and a willingness to see God at work.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to encourage you to think about the questions we've explored today. What mountains are you facing in your life?
Yeah.
Where are you placing your trust? And how might forgiveness be the key to unlocking that power of faith within you?
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
We hope this exploration of Mark chapter 11 has sparked some new insights for you and inspired you to dig a little deeper into your own journey of faith.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not about reaching some perfect destination.
No.
It's about embracing that messy, beautiful, transformative process of walking with God.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep trusting in the power of His love.